My wife's name is Susan. We met in high school, and after dating for 10 years, we got married. Susan wasn't the typical beauty queen, but she had a cute smile and a cheerful personality. Shortly after our wedding, we were blessed with a daughter, whom we named Michelle. Susan was a devoted wife and mother, always supporting me through everything. At that time, my mother was living with us and battling cancer. Despite the challenges, Susan managed to take care of our daughter and my mom, while also working part-time. I often worried about her overworking, but she insisted on contributing to our finances. Every day, she would drop Michelle off at daycare, make sure my mom was cared for by a visiting nurse, and then head to work. No matter how tired she was, Susan would always say, "It's better to eat healthy," and go grocery shopping to cook homemade meals. Whenever I had a day off, I helped with the housework and took my mother to her medical appointments when possible. This routine continued for 3 years until my mother passed away. After the funeral, just when we were beginning to settle into our new life, Susan suddenly disappeared. She left behind only a letter. In it she wrote, "I'm sorry. I want a divorce. Please don't look for me." She took only the bare essentials with her. I was left in shock, unable to comprehend why she had left so suddenly. I tried calling her cell phone immediately, but it was disconnected. The thought crossed my mind that maybe she had run off with someone else, but I couldn't believe she would have an affair. The night before she disappeared, Susan had said, as usual, "I will always love you and Michelle." Her sudden departure left me in disbelief. If she had been unhappy enough to want a divorce, I would have wanted to talk it over. It was hard to accept that everything could end with just a letter. I was filled with frustration and regret. Had I taken her devotion for granted? Had she been struggling in ways I hadn't noticed? The realization that I might have missed something was overwhelming, and I cried until I had no tears left. Since then, I've been waiting for Susan to come back, but she never did. I tried reaching out to all her friends, but no one knew where she was. She had a sister who lived abroad, but Susan said they hadn't seen each other in a long time, and I didn't have her contact information. Her parents had passed away when she was young, leaving no other relatives to turn to. I was left with no one to rely on, and the questions remained. Where did she go? Why did she leave? Despite my confusion and pain, I chose not to proceed with a divorce because I wanted to believe in her. Since then, I've been raising Michelle on my own. She has never become rebellious, and although I don't like to brag, Michelle turned out to be a wonderful kid. She's great at cooking and makes delicious scrambled eggs for breakfast. They might taste a little plain, but they have a comforting quality, much like the scrambled eggs my wife used to make. As Michelle grew older, she began to resemble Susan more and more. Her smile, the way she covered her mouth when she laughed, the way her eyes narrowed when she was surprised. It was all just like Susan. Even her casual gestures brought back memories of Susan during her school days. Seeing my daughter often made my heart feel like it was going to burst. Whenever I looked sad, Michelle would come up to me with a big smile and say, "Cheer up, Dad. Come on, smile, smile." Her face looked so much like Susan's that it tugged at my heart. For me, Michelle became the only reason to keep going. Without her, I don't think I would have ever recovered from the shock of Susan leaving. Michelle attended local schools for middle and high school, and instead of going to college, she entered the workforce. Being the kind soul she is, she might have given up on college because she didn't want to burden me. I was a low-paid salary worker, not particularly successful at my job. I never climbed the corporate ladder and remained a regular employee. It's pretty pathetic, especially when I see how hard my daughter works. Even after becoming an adult, Michelle chose to stay and live with me. I always told her, "You can live your life the way you want." But she would just laugh and say, "I am living the way I want to, Dad. Besides, you wouldn't be able to cook if I left, right? I can't just leave you and live by myself." It made me so happy that she chose to stay by my side. But I know that one day, Michelle will meet a wonderful man and get married. Even though it's still in the future, the thought sometimes makes me feel sad. Michelle turned 20 this year, and on her birthday, we received a letter. It was in a cute envelope with floral patterns, addressed to both Michelle and me. When I looked at who it was from, I was stunned to see Susan's name written there. I stood there shocked as Michelle came up behind me and whispered, "Mom." We opened the envelope together, and inside was a letter written in Susan's familiar handwriting. It was definitely Susan's writing, beautiful, feminine, and unmistakably hers. We read the letter intently. I'm sorry for leaving so suddenly. You must resent me for being so selfish. I'm filled with remorse thinking about how much you both must have worried and suffered. As we read, tears streamed down both mine and Michelle's cheeks. At the end of the letter, it said, "There's something I want to give to you both. It's with Claire, so please go see her." Claire is Susan's twin sister. She had been living abroad for years, and Susan had said they hadn't been in contact, but Claire's contact information was included in the letter. When I called, Claire answered with a voice that sounded relieved yet sad. "I'm glad you contacted me," she said. I asked Claire. Susan wrote in her letter that she has something to give us. Where is she now? Claire simply replied, "Let's meet in person and talk." After getting her address, Michelle and I went to Claire's apartment a few days later. It seemed she had returned from abroad a few years ago. After exchanging greetings, we were led into the living room. "Thank you for coming all the way here today," Claire said, looking at Michelle. "You've grown so much. You look just like my sister." Her words almost tore my heart apart. I asked, "Where is Susan?" "We want to see her." Claire looked down and said, "I'll take you to her. I'll explain everything once we get there." She drove us for about an hour, and we arrived at a large hospital. My mind raced. What does this mean? Is Mom sick? Michelle and I were in a panic. With a sad expression, Claire told us that Susan had early onset dementia. She had been advised by doctors to be hospitalized and undergo rehabilitation, but Susan couldn't bring herself to tell us. She left home because she didn't want to be a burden, and she didn't want us to see her gradually forget her own family. She thought telling me the truth would only worry me, so Susan decided to leave us and was admitted to the hospital. Claire was the only one informed about it. Hearing that Susan's condition had progressed so much that she no longer even recognized Claire, I broke down crying on the spot. Michelle was crying too. It seems that before Susan completely forgot her family, she asked Claire to deliver the letter on Michelle's 20th birthday. Claire then took out a small jewelry box from her bag and presented it to us. "Susan wanted me to give these to you," she said. Inside was a necklace and a ring. The necklace was a treasure Susan had always cherished. It was the first thing I ever bought her on our first date when we were students. And the ring? It was our wedding ring. I couldn't afford anything fancy on Mo's salary, but Susan had cried big tears of joy, saying thank you, thank you. Claire handed us another letter. It was filled with memories of a family trip we took together, like the time we went to an amusement park where Michelle got too excited and hurt herself, and the time I tripped at another park, becoming a laughingstock. Susan had written down these memories while she could still remember them, and she asked Claire to deliver the letter, along with the necklace and ring, when Michelle turned 20. Claire explained that Susan had entrusted her feelings and wishes to her, and with tears in her eyes she said, "I really wanted to contact you sooner, but I couldn't break the promise I made with my sister." "No, Claire, I'm grateful to you. Thank you for keeping Susan's feelings safe," I said, expressing my heartfelt gratitude. Michelle also thanked Claire, and so after a decade, we were finally able to meet Susan again. When Claire opened the door to the hospital room, there was Susan, now aged, with streaks of gray in her hair. "Oh, hello. You must be from the room next door, right? And who might this gentleman and lovely lady be? Nice to meet you." She greeted us, not recognizing who we were. I had thought about what I would say if I ever met my wife again. I had been thinking about it for years, but when the moment finally came, I was speechless. I had never imagined a situation like this. The moment our eyes met, my chest tightened, and tears spilled over. "Oh dear, why are you crying so much? Did something sad happen?" Susan asked, looking at us worriedly. "No, we came to clean the hospital today, and I guess the disinfectant got in my eyes," I lied awkwardly. "Oh, I see. Be careful," she replied kindly. As we stepped out of the room, Michelle, her eyes red, patted my back and said, "Smile, Dad, smile." Susan had always been my greatest support. She cared for me more than anyone else, yet I hadn't noticed her suffering at all. I felt foolish for not realizing it sooner. Seeing me downcast, Michelle told me, "Mom might have forgotten about us, but the memories we made as a family are still in our hearts. I think it's the same for her. She might forget in her mind, but her heart remembers. Let's support Mom as much as we can from now on." "Yeah, you're right," I agreed, proud of the wonderful daughter I had. I was moved to tears again. We can't bring back the memories Susan has forgotten, nor can we reclaim the time we weren't together. But if it helps her in any way, I want to be there for her, to support her as much as I can. From the next day on, Michelle and I visited Susan whenever we could. We talked to her about daily things, about everything and anything. Susan seemed to perk up, saying, "Chatting really activates the brain, doesn't it?" On a shelf in her hospital room, there were old family photos of us. "Isn't this photo wonderful? It brings back such nostalgic feelings. I feel the same way when chatting with you. It's very comforting," Susan said, smiling at Michelle and me. "We feel the same way," Michelle and I replied, smiling back at Susan. The three of us laughed together as a family. To be with my wife and daughter again, it was something I had waited for so long. Even if she forgets, our bond as a precious family will never change. I want to support her always and forever.